In this video we'll have a look at how to copy absolute and relative cell referencing. This is a very important concept because if you don't know how to use this, you end up having to duplicate your formulas many times. So to get started, I'd like you to actually create this spreadsheet, and what I'll need you to do is type in the word tax at A3 and I'll get you to type in 0.12 for the tax amount, and then January at $100. Now there's a feature I want to show you here how to do this, and that's how to do a copy. And what we're going to do here is take the word January, and if you notice as I roll my mouse to the bottom right corner, the mouse changes from a hollow cross to this solid plus sign cross. If I hold the mouse here and I just drag my mouse down, you'll notice that the computer will copy the data down the screen, but in this case, because it was January, Excel knows to compensate and copy in its relative. It's January, February, March, and so on. Now if you wanted to create some sample data, let's say you've got January amount and then you want to create another sequence of data for sample data in this case, what I'm going to do is start off with January at 1000 and February at 1100, and I want March to be 1200 and 1300 and so on. I can simply select those two numbers, which creates a pattern in Excel, then move my mouse to the bottom right corner to the copy command, copy little handle, and drag it down. You'll see here that goes to 1200 and then 1300 and 14 and so on. So this is a quick way of getting the computer to enter in sequential data for you. Alright, so once you've done that, you can pause the video and practice that, because that's a very helpful process. So now what I want to do is write a formula that will calculate the taxes for January. So assuming that let's say there was $1,000 and we needed to calculate our tax, this would be a formula because there's no real function that would calculate this. So again, we're going to hit the equal key. So there's no name because it's just a formula. And what I want to do is take B5, which is 1,000, and multiply. So we use the star key, represent 1,000, or the multiplication, and then I'm going to click on B3, or I could have typed those in. And you can see here it's B5 times B3. And I push enter and it comes up with $120, which is what I want. Now, taking the idea of copying, I could take this and I could simply grab that handle and drag it down. And you may assume it might work, but you can see that this is obviously incorrect. This should come up with a different number than 0, obviously. So the reason this occurred, now I'm just going to highlight that and then press the delete key. The reason it occurred is because the original formula that I wrote, B5 multiplied by B3, is a relative formula. It means that for the cell that I'm in right now, the calculation is relative. If I was to copy this down one cell, let me just copy it down, what it did, if you look carefully, is it took B6, which is what I want, and multiplied it by B4, which brought this down. And as I copy the formula down, it brings all the formulas relative with it. So what I want to do is I want to determine, first of all, that one of these formulas or one of these references is relative to my copy and one of them is absolute. And the blue one here is relative to the tax that I'm going to pay over here. So these two are relative. And for example, if I was to do the 1100, the C6 would be relative. These two are related, so to speak, and these two and so on. The only cell that actually is absolute is the 12%, the tax. So what I need to do is in my formula, and that's B3, I need to convert this into an absolute cell reference. And to do that, you need to highlight, or you can select within that cell and press F4. So I'm going to highlight my B3 and press the F4 key, and that simply just puts a $ in front of the column B and a $ in front of the row, which means lock or make it an absolute column reference and an absolute row reference, and press enter. The answer is still the same. You'll see here that the formula looks very similar, and I simply just double click on my formula and it comes up in an audit view. Now if I want to copy the formula now, you'll see what happens is when I drag that down, it works properly. So without knowing how to do an absolute and relative cell reference, you wouldn't be able to do the copy down. That means that you would actually have to go into each field or each month and perform the calculation manually and write each of these equals this times the tax and so on, and you'd have to do it all by hand, so to speak, and that would be a long process, and the chances of you making a mistake would go up drastically. So the tip here is that you need to be able to create and identify what cell within a formula is absolute, meaning that the cell never changes. The cells that you do want to change are relative, they're related. In this case, the tax is absolute, it never changes. Alright, so that's an example of absolute and relative cell referencing. I'll see you in the next video.